Because
So it's me. Okay. Like that. Oh, okay.
then Jill comes on. You can just, if you want to turn mine off, you just hit it the one time, or. And then I'm on, okay. And then
Okay. Okay, welcome to the April 23rd school board meeting. We're going to get started, and it's great to see so many students here. We look forward to recognizing and celebrating you, and thank you all for coming out on this gorgeous night to be with us. And also thank you to all of our staff that are here this evening. So we want to start with the call to order, and Clerk Gorham, can you...
Thank you, Chair. I am here. Member Kirby.
Here.
Chair Loeffler-Kemp.
Here.
Member Lofald.
Here.
Member Oswald.
Here.
Member Sandstead.
Here.
Member Trinka is excused. Superintendent Gronseth.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Horton.
Here.
Deputy Clerk Erickson. Secretary Dolence.
Here.
Secretary Tebow.
Here.
And then Emma Natali. Vanessa Farrell. Thank you, Chair. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Gorham. Could everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. Okay, moved by member Lofold, seconded by member Sandstead. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of... Oh, okay, sorry about that.
It's okay. Not usual we have to do this, but I'd like to make a motion to definitely postpone from the Human Resources Committee 2A, B, C, and D. We discussed these items in committee and decided that more information would be needed, so I move that we definitely postpone those items until May 2019.
Okay, seconded by member Kirby. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor of this motion to definitely postpone?
Your mic.
All in favor of definitely postponing the discussion of 2A, 2B, and 2C from the HR committee, please say... And D, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Member Gorham, for bringing that up. The next item is approving the regular school board meeting March 19th minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we voted on that. Okay, sorry about that. So can I have... all in favor of approving the changes to the agenda and approving the full agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Okay, moving then to the next item, reading and approving the minutes. First from the regular school board meeting on March 19th. Could I have a motion to approve? Moved by member Kirby. Can I have a second? Seconded by member Sandstead. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. And then the second item was our special school board meeting minutes with the property updates on April 1st. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Moved by member Lofold. Could I have a second? Seconded by member Kirby. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. And now we are going to do the school and community recognition. So school board members, if we could join down at front, please.
Members of the board, I'm pleased to introduce our health occupation students and their advisor, Kim Olson. Health occupation students from Dunfeld and Duluth East High Schools earned top honors at the 2019 State HOSA Leadership Conference. Congratulations to Adriana Birdseye, Ara Cora, Maddie Smith, Zolfi Jerzeski, Alyssa McCorson, Izzy Lind, Alora Weiland, Ryan Braun, Noah Stelmacher, Sheena Sanako, Ali Dahl, Trinity Alm, Mullen Johnson, and Kayla Brock. Students took top spots in medical terminology, medical spelling, home health aide, nursing assistant, veterinary science, medical reserve corps partnership, Barbara James Service Award, MRC volunteer recognition, and service projects for the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation, among others. Health occupation courses and HOSA are part of our career and technical education programs. Students can earn certification or college credit through some of these courses. Students explore and prepare for careers in the health field, working anywhere from hospitals, clinics, nursing homes, or cruise ships, sports arenas, and within patients' home. We are so proud of the work these students do and of their success. Congratulations.
It's always great to be able to recognize our students across the district for so many great things that are happening. So thank you all, students, for being here again and taking the time tonight. We're going to move on to the audience portion of our agenda. And I just want to remind folks a couple things to know when you sign up to speak at board meetings. Persons wishing to address the school board need to sign in prior to the meeting list with their name, address, and matter that you wish to speak. So thank you for those people who have signed up. If there's anybody else that still would like to sign up, there is a sheet right over there. If you have any handouts for the board, please give them to the school board secretary. Secretary is located in the back of the room. Persons addressing the board will speak in the order in which they signed up. Each person addressing the board will have 3 minutes. Persons addressing the The board may not merge their time in order to allow one person to speak for more than 3 minutes. The clerk of the board, which is Clerk Gorham, will start the spotlight timer at the start of each person's time. The green light means go, the yellow light means to start wrapping up, and the red light means stop. And persons addressing the board shall confine their comments to matters pertaining to the agenda or relevant to matters of administrative concern. And Member Gorham, if you could now read the 11 tools of civility, please.
Thank you, Chair Loeffler-Kemp. The school board recognizes 11 tools of civility that will provide increased opportunities for civil discourse in order to find positive resolutions to the issues that face our community. These tools include pay attention, listen, be inclusive, don't gossip, show respect, be agreeable, apologize, give constructive criticism, take responsibility, be honest and care for others, show your evidence, share your reasoning. And then also community vision and priorities for Duluth schools. We will build on our shared beliefs and values of unity, high achievement, and responsible use of resources to create Duluth public schools and classrooms that are safe, supportive, and inclusive. We will work to inspire every student to achieve their potential and prepare students to lead productive, fulfilling lives as citizens of Duluth and the wider world.
Thank you, Clerk Gorham. So the first person signed up is Jane Juten.
What? Oh, I have to push this? Nope. No. It's on. Okay. I'm actually here on behalf of my 8th grade students at Ordine East. In February, they were all going to gather here, and we decided to go through kind of proper protocol, letting the curriculum coordinator talk to the high school principals and so on. But they wanted me to bring letters on their behalf. They are currently using a curriculum called CPM. I have never in 30 years in public school education had students ask me for a math curriculum in the high school. They're going to be leaving us at the end of the year, and they really want East High School to be using this CPM curriculum. The reason for wanting to use it, it is team-based. It helps all of my students. My kids that are chronically truant never miss anything because the homework spirals and they always feel a part of the program. I have a number of letters from students, and I had parents asking if they needed to write a petition. I said, no, I will be your voice to the school board. They just want to be heard. And this letter I received this morning from a student said she had failed first, second, and third grade, or second, third, and fourth grade because she couldn't do her multiplication facts. She kept getting taken out of class because she couldn't memorize things fast enough. And she said, I really need CPM in high school. It is the first year that I've understood things. I've been able to learn from my team and from Mrs. Jutine. She said, please make it accessible in 9th grade. So I am their voice. They want to be heard. They would like this curriculum to be carried forth into high school for them, which for me as an educator, that they're interested in their math class is pretty cool. One side note, since it's only flashing green, I have a student who is a behavior problem beyond description, and he is in one of my CPM classes, and his goal for the MCA is to exceed the standards. Because with Gina Clive's help, if that class meets or exceeds, they will get a pizza party, and if they exceed, they will even get wings. This is their request, not mine. I need help from my principal to pay for it, because hopefully tomorrow that will come to fruition. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jane. The next speaker is Stacy Octahoff.
Hi, good evening. Before I begin my remarks, Bernie Burnham asked that I send her regrets that she could not be here. She is with the following group lobbying at the state capitol: special ed teachers Sam Daly, Emily Foyt, Melissa Scanlon-Olson, Cassie Letourneau, and then those are sped teachers, and then Shane Johnson and Emily Glomsky. So Bernie was sorry she could not be here tonight. I'm going to put my reading glasses on. I'm going to struggle. My name is Stacy Achterhoff. I'm an intervention teacher for the Families and Transitions program. I work at Myers-Wilkins Elementary. I haven't been back to thank you for your wise decision to allocate a higher percentage of Myers-Wilkins compensatory education dollars to Myers-Wilkins since I asked for that last year. This decision both moves us closer to using Comp Ed as it is intended to be used and is a step towards financing that reflects the district's campaign to be more equitable. The level of support needed for our students is at times overwhelming. Over 80% of our students live in poverty, with some grade levels as high as 95%. There is no socioeconomic balance in our classrooms at Myers-Wilkins. Almost 20% of our kids currently qualify as homeless. 56% of our students are students of color, a population of people often void of equitable treatment and funding within many systems, including public education. Yesterday, as I chatted with 3 different kids after the MCA testing, all 3 had absent parents, cared for by extended family and foster care, while their parents are incarcerated and or in treatment. This year, we have been able to add social work services for general education kids. We've been able to provide more small group interventions with Fidelity in both math and reading, and we've been able to add paraprofessional support for general education students, all to provide a meaningful education, to avoid special education, to honor the needs of general education kids who are separated from their parents, who are being raised by parents struggling with addiction, depression, and underemployment, who are hungry and whose housing is unstable. The depth and magnitude of the social, emotional, and academic intervening is astounding and imperative. To be clear, we are not flush with services. We have some of the services required to meet some of the needs of our students. My hope is that you continue to work toward honoring the compensatory funding our kids generate, that you use general education money to fund all schools equally, and then use compensatory education dollars to fund schools equitably. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. The next speaker is Joanna Walters.
Good evening. My name is Joanna Walters, and I am the Dean of Students at Myers-Wilkins Elementary. As my colleague Stacy stated, I would also like to explain the impact the decision of Comp Ed dollars being redistributed in the 18-19 school year has meant. This funding shift has made it possible for us to hire more support staff. Due to these extra support personnel, we have been able to work on district goals that greatly impact student achievement. For years in our district, we have been talking about reducing our number of out-of-school suspensions. In my experience, the way that is best accomplished is by having strong relationships with the students so that restorative practices can be put into place. These restorative practices make it possible for us to problem solve with the students rather than applying an out-of-school suspension. It takes time to build these relationships. Because we are more efficient in our processes due to the extra staff, we are able to take the time that we need to speak with the children, dig into the issue, and find out what the true core of the problem is rather than removing them from school. Our OSS numbers have gone down significantly this year. I attribute that to our ability to better connect and restore with the students because we have more support and time in which to do so. Thank you for your time and attention, and please know that this funding is a game changer for our kids and our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. The next speaker is Michele Bakker.
You get the Myers-Wilkins trio in a row here. My name is Michele Bakker, and I've taught on the hillside of Duluth since 1989. I've committed my teaching career to the children and the family on the hillside. And while my commitment has remained strong, I have not seen the district's commitment to my students stay firm. When I started at Nettleton, it was the early years of the magnet program. We saw students from a variety of economic backgrounds drawn to our school. Our students benefited from having economically diverse classrooms. And moreover, they benefited greatly by being able to stay in one school for the school year, no matter where they moved in the city. But then our busing was taken away. We still had compensatory ed money, though, money created to support access for academically unprepared and economically disadvantaged students. At one point, we had 9 reading teachers and 4 math teachers working with kids in small groups and individually, and our test results showed it. While we were never one of the top performing schools, we were solidly in the middle despite having the highest poverty rate. But then the school district decided to combine the 2 highest poverty elementary schools together, and then the district changed how it gave out comp ed money to the point where we had 1 reading teacher and 1 math teacher to serve almost 400 kids. Last year, I switched from being a classroom teacher to being a reading interventionist, and I was able to serve about 40 kids. But things changed this year. With the restoration of needs-based allocation of comp ed money, we were able to hire an additional intervention teacher in reading and math, and partway through the year, another basic skills teacher. And I'm here to tell you it made a difference. It made a difference to the 90 kids we were able to serve this year in reading. It made a difference in our group sizes that went from 4 to 6 kids in a group to 3 to 4 kids in a group, which makes smaller groups make us be able to give more targeted intervention. It made a difference to my 3rd graders who each jumped a grade level by January this year. It made a difference to our 4th graders. All but one of our 4th grade intervention students have moved up 1 or 2 categories on last week's MCA tests. It made a difference to one of my 1st grade groups who went from reading at a level A, which is typical for the beginning of kindergarten, who are now reading at level I, right where they should be in 1st grade. In a school where 89% of our 1st graders were considered at risk based on our fall fast testing, intervention is a great need. It is not a luxury. It has made a difference to all the struggling readers who are able to get the small group remediation that they need to hopefully keep them from ever needing special education services. While I'm sharing some of our reading successes, our math interventionists are seeing a significant growth as well. The staff and teachers at Myers-Wilkins are committed to doing all we can to serve our district's neediest kids. Will you commit to do the same by making sure general ed money is allocated equally to all schools and that comp ed money follows the students it's intended to help?
Thank you, Michelle. The next speaker is Ann Square Brown.
Good evening, school board members and Superintendent Gronseth. Thanks again for being here. I know you have lots of meetings, and I appreciate the chance to be here. My name is Ann Square Brown, and I'm representing the Community-Based School Equity Initiative. And board members, at last week's business committee meeting, we appreciate that you raised issues related to the use of the framework for equity in the budget process and the distinction between needs related to performing at grade level and other desired educational outcomes. We look forward to the report that Member Sandstead asked for, linking expenditures to the needs that they address. We heard last week that buildings will receive basically the same number of FTEs as they do in the current year. This addresses a concern that we have about abandoning the student to FTE ratio and the shift that would make in gen ed dollars to undo the impact of the comp ed realignment. It sounds like this year that won't happen. We are still troubled by the loss of the ratio as a guide to distributing funds. Discretion can go in any direction, but most often, over time, it neglects the needs of the marginalized groups. Equity is served by embedding equitable practices into policy. 2, centralizing the bookkeeping for various funding streams sounds like a great benefit to the buildings and the district. Yet, centralizing decision-making over how to use discretionary building resources seems counterproductive, and it suggests a lack of trust in the leadership that teams are selected to serve that role. So we thank the board for listening to the community, people gathered here today and ongoing, and for advocating for practices that are transparent, equitable, and centered on the greatest needs within our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. The next speaker is Betty Green.
Good evening, Chair Loeffler-Kemp, members of the school board, and Superintendent Gronseth. My name is Betty Green. I'm speaking for myself and on behalf of the community group Education Equity Alliance. At last week's Business Committee meeting, Nora Sandstead asked for the administration to report on how needs identified by individual buildings are matched to expenditures in order to evaluate the degree to which the district is adequately addressing basic educational needs. We also think this is important to know. Thank you, Member Sandstead, for requesting this information. On another topic, we appreciate the district's adoption of the Commitment for an Education Equity Framework. As you begin your search for a new superintendent, this framework will be especially important as you determine the characteristics you desire in a superintendent and as you plan for community engagement in this process. Often, the people who attend general community sessions are members of the dominant culture. It is particularly important to also intentionally seek out wide input from members of the communities who are most impacted by the gaps in graduation rates and achievement. This may require thinking a bit out of the box. Please actively use your Tool for Equity Accountability form as you shape your expectations for a superintendent and as you plan how to best gather community input. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Is there anybody else that would like to sign up to speak? Would you just double check one more time? Thank you. No? Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to now move into the report from the superintendent.
Thank you, Chair Loeffler-Kemp. Well, first off, this is a very special week. This is Administrative Assistants Appreciation Week, and I'd like to thank our administrative assistants, especially Melinda and Jackie, who happen to be right in front of us. They certainly keep our district and our schools and our school board running smoothly and making sure that we get all the information and all the help we need. So I don't know what we would do without you. Thank you. On another note, the mayor recently held the State of the City address at Myers-Wilkins Elementary. We appreciate her support of the schools and the fact that our schools really serve as community centers where activities like this and events like this can be held. And I know Ms. Achterhoff spoke there that evening too, very eloquently. Thank you for your efforts that night. And the World Beat Drummers, I know Mrs. Bakker was playing drums there. And the Denfeld Clock Tower Cafe made the refreshments. And I know that there was a lot of work that went in by a number of staff members to quickly set up the gym into auditorium seating and a stage right after school. So thank you to everyone who worked hard to make that event happen. Also, we heard that some of our teachers are down at the Capitol right now advocating for changes in special ed funding. The legislative session obviously continues. There's quite a big difference between the omnibus bill in the House and the omnibus bill in the Senate. If there was ever a time to contact legislators across the state, this would be the time. I can tell you that our local legislators understand this issue and have been working very hard to advocate for change. While they appreciate hearing our stories and what it means to us, it's really legislators across the state that need to get this message, especially in the Senate. So, share your thoughts through email, through phone calls, however you can, and you can find those addresses and phone numbers on the legislative website for both the Senate and the House. And so please let your voice be heard. We will be down there soon advocating for changes once again. One of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was the events of April 5th. It's been a couple of weeks since we were asked to put our schools in a lockdown in response to what at the time was an unknown threat against schools. So all of our schools went into lockdown. And then when we found out that the threat was localized to East High School, we acted there as well. So the events of that day just really serve as a reminder of the importance of having a good crisis response team plan and to be practicing that plan. We often say, if you hear something or see something, say something. And we are very thankful to the person who made the report that day to the police department. I have no doubt that their report that day was vital to the quick response that we saw that day. And we are thankful for the efforts of the Duluth Police Department, who in 59 minutes went from a completely anonymous call of not knowing who or where, 59 minutes later had someone in custody. And I think in a community this large, that is quite a feat. So we thank them for their expertise and their talents. We also thank our staff and our students who responded quickly that day and continue to respond after the events to make sure everyone had good information, who worked to debrief what had happened, how we can improve. We're going to continue to debrief with the police department to go over the events of that day and to learn as much as we can from this event so that we can continually improve our plans and respond even better in the future. So thank you to everyone for your support in that and for your hard work. I think it certainly shows that the ALICE trainings that we've been having are not lost efforts, unfortunately. So I can't end with that. I have to end with a highlight. And this month, or this week rather, we have a student art exhibit at the Miller Hill Mall. Tomorrow night there's a big opening event, and we invite people to go to the Barnes and Noble Court between 5 and 7 and tell our students how wonderful their art is. They have lots of displays up there. It'll be up there all week, and please come and help us celebrate that. We hope to see many of you there. And now, of course, the big ending. Let us first hear from Emma and Natalie from Denfeld.
Okay. Our student government organized our Spring Fling dance, which was the first time we've ever had it. It was a huge success. A lot of our students had lots of fun on it. We also are having our annual Coin Wars, a fundraiser held to raise money for local organizations, to which grades compete to see which grade level can donate the most money. Our robotics team held a silent auction at which they raised a substantial amount of money to help fund their trip to state and also to put money in the fund for next year. Our spring play is opening this Thursday. They're performing Charlie's Aunt, and I encourage you all to attend. They've been putting in very long practice hours in the past few weeks to make sure the play is amazing. So it'll be this Thursday, the 25th, starting at 7 through Saturday, the 27th, and also at 7 at Denfeld High School Auditorium. Our knowledgeable team went to state, and we also had 6 team members of the speech team qualify for the state tournament. Congratulations to Quinton Ramoldi, Autumn Zimmerman, Keely Gustafson for being named to the all-tournament team, as well as Keely Gustafson for placing 5th in state in exempt reading, and Autumn Zimmerman for placing 8th in serious drama. That was good for them.
Thank you. And Representative Vanessa Farrell from East.
An East Club, Sources of Strength, just launched the Trusted Adults campaign. This campaign includes students identifying their trusted adults at school and at home, which makes them feel safer knowing they have people to rely on. Also, right before spring break, East was put on lockdown. Everyone in the school had a different reaction, which is okay. However, the emotional responses were overwhelming for 3 counselors. During the lockdown, students utilized techniques we learned earlier this year in ALICE training by barricading the doors. ALICE is alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. but the training left room for error when parents overloaded the school phone lines with calls. Students will continue to practice this training throughout the year. More recently, all students finished reading and math MCAs, and science will be done soon. There is an upcoming blood drive on May 1st at East High School. The annual East Art Show and open mic night is on May 5th at East.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you, Emma and Vanessa, for your reports and keeping us posted in upcoming activities to take part in. I am sorry I won't be able to go to Charlie's Aunt play because I'll be getting on a bus with a bunch of East Orchestra students, including my daughter, for a trip to Chicago. So, but thank you again for your reports. And just wanted to highlight one other thing Superintendent Grants had mentioned about the legislative session, and just really, again, want to reiterate, many of us school board members have been down at the Capitol lobbying the last couple months as well. And the stories, though, from parents and staff and students across the district are real key. And so, as the superintendent said, now is the good time to contact elected officials, either our own up here or if you know of elected officials around the state. So thank you again for the different updates. We're going to move on now to the report of our standing committees, and we'll start with the Education Committee. Member Lofold.
Thank you again for coming and my team getting ready. The Education Committee meets on Mondays, the second Monday of the month, so we met on April 15th at 4:15 here in the boardroom, and I encourage you to attend. It's where we have rich conversation, as some of our community speakers today talked about. They attended either the Education Committee meeting on Monday or our Human Resource and Business meeting on Tuesday and listened to us, question and ask for and dialogue with our leadership and with each other to come to an understanding so we can vote and uphold in the best interest. I want to shout out to my colleague Kim Olson from the Denfeld East HOSA program and the students that she brought. There are more students I know that could attend tonight, but I've seen their work, and it's just an incredible program that we host. And with Duluth being such a hub of medical opportunity, I'm really glad that our Duluth Public Schools offers the HOSA program, and I will look forward to watching it grow as we continue to reach out to career and tech courses in our high schools. I want to shout out to Emma and Vanessa too for highlighting the things that are happening in our schools, and so it's good to get that pulse, and it's good to remind us to attend the events. And thanks for the art exhibit reminder, and that's in my report as well. So there were 40 views of our YouTube educational. I'm taking a track. I think that's the most views. So thank you, team, for an engaging committee report. And again, we are on YouTube, so we can take part in our committee meetings even when we can't attend regularly. We start out our education committee meetings with reports from our Assistant Superintendent, Jeff Horton, and our Director of Curriculum, Gail Netland. And so Assistant Superintendent Horton gave a shout out to Section 5 Public Forum Debate Champions that were from Denfeld. Autumn Zierman and Quinton Ramoldi were representing us at state, and they took 10th at the state debate tournament. So thanks for that shout out. We reviewed the site visits that our leadership had at Lester Park and Ordine East. We also had updates about upcoming summer school options, and also some background in the ALICE training dates. And we're pleased to report that I think we're on track for 2 training dates for non-certified staff in the Duluth Public Schools, and those look like they're being offered by ALICE for free, which is great to hear. And we're looking forward to those opportunities for our non-certified staff. So that's recommended. Assistant Superintendents report is recommended for informational. And then next we had Curricular Director Gail Netland's report, and it was brief, and it will be because so much of her report was given to us in informational PowerPoints and presentations by our music specialists and our art specialists. And this month we had the art specialists. So we're moving on to a presentation that if you wanted to see it, it's not only on our YouTube site, but it's also in our board book that you can access on the ISD 709 site. But we had a great presentation by Deb Hanu, who's an art specialist in our district, and she reported that she is just completing her 30th year as an art teacher in our district, and she's done incredible work. But she shared with us the next adoption of our art standards and what the art community teachers in our elementaries, middle schools, and high schools are doing to ensure that our students are getting the best opportunity in the arts education. She rolled out a number of initiatives and work that the arts community has done. Deb shared assumptions that guided their work on the standards. She also shared a Google Doc that they created that looks incredibly beneficial, where it's almost operating like a PLC, where art teachers will tap into and see what lessons and what standards are being met in the lower grades, so you build as a scaffold as the art education continues into our high schools. She gave us the implementation timeline, which is important for us as a board to look at, that we're due to be completed by that rollout by the 2021-22, and with the work of our committee and the community and the arts teachers and instructors that we have in our district, I know that in that year we will be meeting the Minnesota state statute and rolling out our new arts curriculum and standard adoptions. Okay. Deb also reminded us about the Duluth Public Schools Art Showcase that's up at the Miller Hill Mall. We do have an opening ceremony tomorrow night, but it also goes all week long. So please try to go up and look at the products of our art students. Our next presentation on the Education Committee was from Duluth Head Start Director Pam Reese, and she shared the latest developments with the federal Head Start grant status, and that's recommended that the Duluth School Board receive that item and that presentation as informational. Next on the Education Board was a presentation by American Indian Education Coordinator Edie Howes and Danny Dunphy, who is an American Indian Education Parent Advisory Board member, and they shared the resolution of concurrence and non-concurrence report for our review. The resolution of concurrence and non-concurrence is submitted to the Minnesota Department of Education on behalf of the Duluth Public Schools American Indian Education Programs Parent Advisory Committee. It is a group of parents that review data and look at best practices for American Indian students in our district, and is always encouraging our district to do more. And we will, as a board, address those concerns. We're going to get another document from our leadership about what we are doing and how we're meeting some of the needs that our parent advisory have directed Edie Howes to share with us. And Edie oversees our American Indian students, of which there's over 600 district-wide. We heard the concerns and recommendations from parents and Edie's staff on how to best serve our American Indian students, families, and staff. And she wants our district to look at what we can do to make it successful. So it's recommended that the Duluth School Board receive those presentations as informational. Next on our Education Committee meeting, we always look at grants that have been submitted. And again, as a board, we are always grateful, thankful. It goes an extra mile. As a teacher myself, I know that there are times I wanted to write grants, but I just didn't have the time. So the fact that we have such incredible staff that continue to work hard to find resources beyond what we can provide. And so we have 6 grants that when we approve this committee or report, we'll also approve these applications. They come from the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation. Assistant Superintendent Jeff Horton has applied for $10,000 to continue work on the tool for equity accountability. So I hope our community members that know about our tool, that we are still looking for money and working towards using that tool even stronger than we are now. We also have a grant for United to End Bullying at Lincoln for $50,000. We have a Novo Foundation grant that was offered by Todd McGowan at Myers-Wilkins for $5,000 for a peer-led intervention program. We have the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation grant from Tanya Sconyers, principal at Denfeld, and Bill Middlefelt for $29,000. It's a full-service community focus. We have a Northland Foundation grant applied for by Jen Jaros for ECFE in the amount of $5,000. We have an Essentia Health grant written by Jen Larva from Lowell for $5,000 to expand Lowell's nature playscape. And these are recommended that the Duluth School Board receive these as informational. We also looked at 2 grant partnerships, and they're interesting if you really, look at what those opportunities are. The 21st Century Community Learning Center, so it's a partnership between the Y program, the YMCA, and the Duluth Public Schools, and this is a partnership grant to expand community learning centers using KeyZone and expanding that concept into the middle schools and high schools. And so that's a partnership that we're looking to approve. We're also looking at a grant partnership called Out of the Box, and it's in partnership at Lincoln Park with Lincoln Park and Equilibrium 3. Is that what it's called? Okay. To teach design at our Lincoln Park Middle School. So those are recommended also as to receive as informational. Next, as action items when we approve this curriculum report or this education report is the FY20 Federal Head Start grant and a Fine Arts adoption. So I won't go into detail. We have already. It's recommended that we are going to approve those action items when we approve this report. We are in our final reading of our policy for weapon-free zone, and we've adopted the MSBA model, and we're going to delete policy 1083 and replace it with Minnesota with policy 501, and that's in its final approval. And we've looked at that. We've tweaked what we've needed. Assistant Superintendent Horton has given us guidance as to what we needed in that policy, and we appreciate your feedback and your work on that policy for us so we can pass it tonight. We have a resolution that I'll read. It's E-4-19-3636, and it is the acceptance of grant awards to Duluth Public Schools. Whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 requires a school district to accept grants by resolution expressed in the terms prescribed by the donor in full, and whereas acceptance of the grant in accordance with the donor's terms is in the best interest of the Duluth Public Schools, now therefore be it resolved that the Duluth Public Schools does accept the below described grant from said organization in accordance with the terms set forth herein. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public Schools wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to this organization or to these organizations. And there is, 2.5 pages of grants that we are so fortunate to approve. And I will move resolution E-4-19-3636.
Thank you, Member Lofold. Second by Member Gorham. Any discussion on this resolution of acceptance of grants? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. You can go on with your report, Member Lofold.
Thank you, Chair Loeffler-Kemp. We just have a few more. We have an extended field trip that we looked at, and it was the Denfeld Automotive Program and their Skills USA. And so we are approving that extended trip request. And I always conclude, I think it always seems like I conclude on this diploma celebration. And so it is with great pleasure that we are able to celebrate the following 5 Duluth Public Schools' most recent graduates: Patricia A. Osana, Maria Lena Kandashis Flores, Van D. Grounds, Brady Leland Farr, and Brennan Richard Phipps. Those are the most recent Duluth Public School graduates, and we can give them a hand. And again, It's recommended that the Duluth School Board accept and approve the above diploma requests. Our future items will be an 8th grade math pilot update and some more policy work as we continue to revise and look at policies in the education world. So I move the Education Committee report for April 23rd, 2019.
Moved by Member Lofold, seconded by Member Sandstead, and thank you, Member Lofold, for just a rich, full report. Is there any discussion on any of the items in the Education Committee? Okay. We did have a very hefty and Education Committee discussion, so so thank you, staff, for all the ways you helped with that discussion at the committee meeting. All in favor of the Education Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. The Education Committee is approved 6-0. We will move on now to the HR Committee, and thank you again, staff. Member Kirby.
Thank you. I was late to the meeting, but Member Gorham handled this very well as usual, but I'll give the report here. We went over the staffing items, including some retirements, which we are sad about, but not for them, for us. We then went to discussion about Policy 404, employment background checks, and as we did earlier in the meeting, this is being deferred to the next board meeting so we can discuss it at the next committee meeting. We did discuss Policy 407, the employee right to know exposure to hazardous substances, and we will delete Policy 4041. The new policy follows the MSBA general policy with some updates. That was the major part of the meeting took place discussing background checks, which we will discuss next month. Informational items included a very brief discussion about the process that is going to be followed, very preliminary, on a superintendent search. Discussion about our nepotism policy, which is not yet ready for passing, and that was it. So I will move passing of the HR report.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Member Kirby, and I think Member Sandstead hit the button first, so she will be quick on the draw. So she will be seconded by Member Sandstead. Is there any further discussion on the HR committee? Okay, all in favor of accepting the HR committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, the HR committee passes 6-0, and now we will move on to the business committee. And Member Trinka, the chair of the committee, is out today, and so Member Oswell will be leading that discussion. I'm going to turn your light on, Member Oswell. There you go.
All right. Thank you, Chair Loeffler-Kemp. As the chair mentioned, Chair Trinka is not here tonight, so the story of the business committee falls on me. So here we go. As usual, everything in the beginning is all about the numbers of cash flow and budget changes and wire transfers and all things numbery. And we discuss APU projections and lovely put together charts and graphs by our CFO. And then we get right away to fundraisers, which we had a couple organizations from different schools raising things, that's silly. Raising money by selling things, there we go. Denfeld Softball, East Alpine Skiing, and Lester Park ECFE are all doing some nice stuff to raise some money for their programs. Then we move on to bids, RFPs, and quotes. First one we had talked about was adding vending machines back. I don't hear a roar of cheers, so I'm assuming that it's still okay, that our kids in middle school and high school are going to get to be able to buy a healthy snack and some flavored water, I imagine, at some point, if we accept these bids. The agreement will be from May 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2023, and renewed annually. And so we're awarding that contract, or that bid, should it go through, to On-Site Enterprises, and we're going to get 21% of the commissions. So kids, collect your spare change and donate back to us. Then we got more bids about district-wide snow plowing services, which we are awarding those to Billington Contracting, Bloody Contracting, and Veal Contracting for different schools, in the amounts of $96,124 for Billington. Oh, wait, that was Bloody, sorry. And Billington is $32,497, and Veal is about $14,130. The prices, I think, are reflective of the sites that each of them are going to be plowing, because they're not the same. And if it snows a lot, it'll be a bargain. If it doesn't snow at all, then we'll be paying more, I guess. That's just the way life rolls. A public school stadium track reconstruction is going to be moving on. We are looking to approve the bid that goes to Northland Constructors of Duluth, as recommended, because they had the lowest bid at $868,000. That's a lot of money, but our track needs it at public school stadium, so we're going to be looking at that. For RFPs, we are going to be considering boundary studies, and it's recommended by the administration that we go with cooperative strategies over Northspan. Thank you to the Duluth News Tribune for giving us a nice article about that decision in the paper. I think going with cooperative strategies is something that I'm certain we can discuss after I'm done talking. Quotes. We got quotes for carpentry labor, fire extinguisher service, lawn care services, refrigeration repair service, and refuse removal and recycling, aka garbage. So those will all be voted on. Policy and regulations, we have none. Contracts will be going to Kraus Anderson for repairing the stairwells at Denfeld High School that the plaster is coming off. I'm not quite sure what Sourcewell EZIQC is, Mr. Spooner, but I'm sure it's necessary. It looks like gibberish, but it looks necessary. And then we can move on to our resolutions finally. The very first thing we always have is the resolution of donations. We have quite a number of schools benefiting by the generosity of our community. So whereas Minnesota Statute 465.03 requires a school district to accept donations by resolution expressed in the terms prescribed by the donor in full, and whereas acceptance of the donations in accordance with the donor's terms is in the best interest of the Duluth Public Schools, now therefore be resolved that the Duluth Public Schools does accept the below described donations from said organizations in accordance with the terms set forth herein. Be it further resolved that the Duluth Public Schools wishes to extend its grateful appreciation to these various individuals and organizations. ALC, CTE at Denfeld and East, Denfeld, Head Start, Lester Park, Lincoln Park, and Lowell are going to be getting something good from this. And so I move Resolution B-4-19-3637.
Second.
May I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Purdy. Any further discussion? All in favor of accepting the donations, please say aye.
Aye.
It moves. Any opposed?
It passes 6-0. You can go on, Member Oswald. Thank you, Chair Loeffler-Kemp. Next, we have pretty much the meat of much of our discussion, and so because of that, and because I want to make sure it's only factual and all the facts are right, that I'm going to ask our CFO Erickson to present our first explanation of the sale and refunding certificates of participation for the 2019 Series A bonds.
Okay. Thank you, Member Oswald. CFO Kathy Erickson.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Member Oswald and Chair Loeffler-Kemp. Resolution for the Series 2019 A bonds. You received a memo earlier today regarding the pricing, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt Rantapa from Baird, who has a summary in detail of what that is, and then I'll answer any other questions before we move forward with the resolution.
Good evening, everyone. The resolution set forth at tonight's school board meeting would be the final board action necessary to approve the issuance of the 2009A certificates, which, as a reminder, is the refunding/restructuring of the 2009B certificates of participation. I'm happy to deliver good news. You'll notice in the bottom portion of the handout that's in your packet tonight, there's a summary that shows the change in payments from when I met with you about a month ago, March 12th to be exact, and summarize this potential financing. You can see that change in payments has improved dramatically. Late in March, the Federal Open Market Committee came out and made the decision and announcement that they wouldn't have any additional rate hikes for the remainder of 2019. Rates in the tax-exempt bond market reacted very favorably and in the district's favor with this announcement, and reduced from the time that I met with you in March to when we brought the bonds to market yesterday. The 2019A bonds were priced, had a successful pricing. If we start with the handout that summarizes the results of this pricing, in the top portion is the assumptions box. Just as a reminder, the 2020 through 2030 maturities of the 2009B certificates are being refunded. They'll be called for redemption or refinanced on May 29th, 2019. That is also the closing date for the certificates, so the bonds will be paid off the same date that the closing will occur. If we move to the last number 3 assumption there, you can see Moody's did affirm the district's BA2 underlying rating for this issue. While Moody's saw the passage of the operating levy and some of the stability in the budget as definitely a positive, they wanted to see the liquidity factor improve in the district before they looked at the possibility of raising that credit rating. So with that, if we move down to the bar graph in the middle left portion, you can see the gray bars titled Old Combined Payments are the payments for the district's 2009B certificates, 2010D certificates, and 2012B certificates. As a reminder, these 3 debt issuances are payable from general fund. The 2009B, of course, is the issue that's being refinanced. The red bar, moving across left to right, is the combination of those new payments after the refinancing. Now, the numbers for that can be seen below if we focus on specifically the 2009B certificates. You can see moving left to right, the old 2009B payments is in the far left column. The new payments that were locked in with yesterday's pricing is the middle column, and the gross change in payments can be seen in the far right column. Moving from fiscal year 2020 to 30, that change of payments being 700,000 reduction in payments up to as high as about 818,000 in fiscal year 30 to add that additional stability to the general fund. Of course, you can see the additional payments past 2030 by stretching that final maturity out to 2034. As a reminder, when we met back in March, I had initially projected that final maturity to be 2036. With the reduction in borrowing rates, we were able to knock 2 years off and bring that back to 2034. For a gross impact of $1,561,000, round figures, negative savings or additional payments made over the life of the refunding as a result of the restructuring. If we move to the next column to the right, you can see that impact on all three of those issues payable from general fund. Starting with the column on the left, you can see those payments in fiscal year 20 were about $3,371,000, increasing to a high point of about $3,512,000 in fiscal year 30. With the restructuring, those payments are leveled off with aggregate debt service ranging from $2,671,000 in fiscal year 2020 to about $2,693,000 in fiscal year 34. As a reminder, we're exchanging the higher interest rates for the lower interest rates, which can be seen in the line graph in the top right portion. This reduction in rates equates to, if we move to the very bottom column, the far right column titled TIC percent, that's the true interest cost percentage of the borrowing, which would be the equivalent to your home mortgage. So when we started, you'll notice if I move to the far left column, I have 4 dates: February 28, 2019, March 12th, April 16th, and March 22nd. Starting with the February 28th and March 12th date, that was, of course, the initial results that I presented to you as a school board about a month ago. You'll notice that true interest cost in the far right column was estimated at a 4.67%. Moving forward, you can see the update that was given last week. On April 16th, that true interest cost reduced to about a 4.28%. With the pricing yesterday, was able to lock in a 3.91% true interest cost. So that reduced borrowing rate is what equates to, if we move to the total payment difference column, 2 to the right, that reduction in borrowing rate is what drives that total payment difference from a negative $4.34 million about a month ago to the $1.559 million that was locked in with the pricing. If we take into account the time value of money, the net present value difference in payments, the next column over, went from $493,000 negative to a positive $694,000 round figure as a result of the pricing yesterday. I would point out the asterisk on the true interest cost column on the far right. You'll notice that footnote states that the true interest cost for the 2009B certificates that are being refunded was a 4.2%. Exchanging that 4.2% rate for the 3.91% rate and taking into account the time value of money is how the net present value arrives at a positive $694,000. If we move to the far right column, looking at the refunding par amount, in order to generate this payment difference and the roughly $700,000 to $820,000 of annual general fund stability from fiscal years 20 to 30, the par amount to do this about a month ago was estimated at $23,745,000. The final amount locked in with pricing was $24,130,000. Some of you may wonder, why did that par amount increase? The reason for that is the next column over to the right, titled Premium. We've seen demand from investors for what's called original issue premium in the market, which basically means that investors willing to pay more for the bonds to get a coupon that's higher than the yield, because that provides protection to them in rising interest rate environment. One thing that, in talking with CFO Erickson and the district's bond counsel, we developed an extraordinary redemption provision or extraordinary redemption call provision for this issue that allows, beginning in 2023 to 2027, one shot, if the district was able to sell property, you'd be able to use those proceeds to call in a portion or all of the bonds, depending on what that sale price was. Minimum amount to be called is $500,000, and again, it's a one-time shot, and it has to be for property sold that the district owns prior to closing. So this will give you, as a school board and administration, additional flexibility where if properties are sold, you have the ability to maybe pay off the 31 through 34 maturities that are being extended. After that extraordinary call expires, a normal call provision kicks in 2027, in which the district's able to refund or call the bonds, pay the bonds off at any time after 2027. Roundabout way of getting back to the premium discussion, because of that extraordinary redemption provision call, investors were not willing to pay the premium with the risk that the certificates might be called early. So that's why you can see the premium that was estimated at $773,000 reduced to roughly $301,000 with the final pricing, and hence the reason that total borrowing amount increased. Just to highlight one other column, the net amount refunded in the far right, or excuse me, two columns over to the right, you can see was $24,155,000 for a total borrowing amount of $24,130,000. So just to summarize, going back a month ago, gross savings were estimated at negative $4.3 million. With the movement in the market that we've seen in the past month with rates moving in your favor, that payment difference reduced to about $1,561,000 or a positive $694,000 on a present value basis. The resolution set forth tonight would be the final step necessary by the board to lock in this final payment structure and move forward towards closing on May 29th. Happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you. Member Oswald, did you have anything additional to say before I start calling on? Okay. Why don't we start with you and then Member Sandsted?
Thank you. Could you just explain why it's important that the time value of money went from a negative number to a positive number? Why is that a good thing?
Great question. Think of it as in the negative time value of $493,000 before was taking into account the time value of money, investing this payment stream at the bond yield. The final bond yield was locked in at 3.77%. By investing the money, the district would have still been negative to the tune of $493,000. In this case, because of the fact that we're locking in the true interest cost of a 391 versus the existing 4.2%, that interest rate differential is enough where even though total payments over the life of the borrowing are about $1,561,000 higher, taking into account the time value of money with that bond yield of 3.77%, it's actually a savings in payments to the tune of $694,000 to the district. Does that help?
So my question is, if we were to refund without restructuring, would we be able to take advantage of these same interest rates? And if we did so, what would the numbers look like in terms of the overall savings over the course of these payments from 2020 to 2030 instead of 2034?
That's a great question. I do not have that figure right in front of me. I was looking in my drive here to see. I know that there was a numbers ran a while back of what that savings was at that time. I can tell you that the savings wasn't significant to the point of looking at a straight exchange of interest rates for interest cost savings like the district is looking at for the 2019B and 19C. If anyone has any other questions, I can find that exact figure and answer that question momentarily.
Sorry, Member Sandsted.
Yeah, my first question was, though, would the interest rates be the same, the new interest rates, if we just refunded without restructuring? So we would take advantage of an interest rate decrease?
They would be very close to what they are here, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? CFO Erickson?
I just wanted to clarify that these have been priced and not sold. So making action tonight would be approving the sale that would happen tomorrow. Our other two issues that we'll be doing next have already been sold because we've had unanimous approval on getting those, so we wanted to price those, but these have not yet been sold. So I just wanted to clarify that your action would trigger us to have our underwriters go to market tomorrow.
And just to clarify, the rates and structure proposed here are locked in with the pricing yesterday. So there'd be no further sale or action necessary to make the move from the restructuring that's proposed now would mean going back to the market with another pricing, which would further delay and, have interest rate risk of interest rates rising between now and pricing. There's a possibility that a revised parameters resolution would have to be adopted to move forward with that action as well. Looking back at the last scenario that I have on my drive here from middle of January, the estimated savings to straight refund was about 90,000 annual savings versus the 700,000 to 800,000 being proposed with the restructure.
Okay. Are there any other questions from any other board members? Okay, Member Sandsted.
I'm just going to make a final comment here that I appreciate the information. I think it's, again, an illusion to say that the $90,000 savings in a restructure would be less than the $700,000 savings in the refinance because, excuse me, I got that wrong, the refinance versus the restructure, because the $700,000 isn't savings, we're still paying the money, we're just paying it over a longer period of time. So interest savings is a separate consideration than when we're paying this money. I certainly stand by my vote from last month that we should not be extending out our payments, particularly from the general fund. It's been a complaint of many board members for the past 5 years, and it is a problem that we were saddled with a decade ago, and we can act to not saddle the board of 2031 with this continued obligation of several $1 million out of the general fund, or we can impose it on them, and I'm going to choose not to do that.
CFO Erickson, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I appreciate the comments. This was the option to help with all of the budget challenges that we have as a district. I think, as we discussed at Business Committee, we'll talk about the budget process that we went through in a few moments. The restructuring, as we discussed, is built in as a preliminary. Again, our budget is not final until June, but should this not move forward, we would then be having to look at restructuring our budget, because this would not be a piece of that.
Thank you, CFO Erickson. Is there any other board members that would like to make a comment on this? I know we had a lot of discussion on this last month as well as at the committee hearing. So, Member Oswald?
Thank you. I am putting my vote behind the time value of money. We're going to save money instead of spend money. That's what you're promising, right? Okay. As long as that happens, I'm voting to go ahead.
Okay. Member Gorham. Member Gorham.
Yeah. You said that at some point, I can't remember the year, time frame of the years, we could pay off some of this with property sold, hypothetically, for, depending on what that value is, and we can make that decision. Can you remind me of those years, and then I'll have a follow-up question.
Between 2023 and 2027, the extraordinary call provision is available to us for that one time, and that is triggered only by a property sale. And then after 2027, the bonds are callable and can be both refunded for interest savings if that were to be viable, or if there was a sale after 2027, we could pay off those as well.
Thank you. So if we sold a property in 2021, would it be possible to utilize?
So at that time, we would have to retain those funds, and at 2023, we could then use those proceeds to call those bonds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gorham. Any other questions? Okay. Member Kirby?
Thank you. I understand Member Sandsted's issue. I can identify with that. However, I look at this more as an investment, maybe given our budget, and I think that the decreased amount we'll have to take out of the general fund can be invested in a way, and so that will bring us hopefully more positive things. So I would support this.
Member Gorham?
Since although we haven't read the resolution yet, it seems like we're taking comments on it. So I'll share my thoughts briefly here with the community and my fellow board members. I was definitely opposed to this when it was going to cost us $4.5 million in the long run. Now that number is significantly decreased, it's made me rethink it a little bit, especially with the potential opportunity to pay some of this off and avoid the cost altogether. Especially when I look at our preliminary budget, I noticed I have a lot of conflicting thoughts in my mind, because I agree with Member Sandstead in not wanting to pay more out of our general fund into these bonds than we have to. But then I'm conflicted because I'm also a board member who said we need to build up our fund balance. In our preliminary budget, I see a $500,000 contribution there. We know that building that back up is going to help us be in better standing financially overall as a district, which I believe in the long run can financially benefit us. It's going to, as I've learned in this last year, some education funding streams are completely unreliable. We've seen that with compensatory education this year, which is vital to the needs of our students. We heard about how these can benefit students. And so having a little bit more flexibility in our budget to assure that we're able to keep those things that we put in motion I feel is a strength of this decision. So ultimately, because of the decreased cost, the possibility of not having to pay $1.5 million more in the long run, and the short-term benefits of building up a fund reserve and ultimately being able to be more responsive to assure that we sustain those services that we are hearing are helping students is why I will support this. Not so brief, sorry.
Thank you, Member Gorham. Is there any further discussion, board members? Okay. So we have 4 resolutions to move forward with and vote on. Excuse me, 3. So, Member Oswald, if you could start with B4 193638, and she's, there are 8 to 9 pages, so she's going to kind of do the first sentence and the last sentence in summary as well. And so, Member Oswald, if you would start with the first one, that would be great.
I'll try my best. There's the resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of an amendment to lease purchase agreement and supplement to declaration of trust, and approving the issuance, sale, and delivery of $24,130,000 refunding certificates of participation series 2019A. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 709 as follows. Pursuant to the authority contained in the statutes, we've approved a long-range facilities plan. We deemed it necessary, expedient, and in the best educational interest of our students and residents to enter into a lease purchase agreement. And then there's page 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7, and 8 says, the school board previously approved a post-issuance debt compliance policy and post-issuance debt compliance procedures, which applies to qualifying obligations to provide for compliance with all applicable federal regulations for tax-exempt obligations or tax-advantaged obligations, collectively the policy and procedures. The school board hereby approves the policy and procedures for the 2019A certificates. The Chief Financial Officer, Executive Director of Business Services, continues to be designated to be responsible for post-issuance compliance in accordance with the policy and procedures. Adopted this 23rd day of April 2019, I move Resolution B-4-19-3638.
Second.
Okay, moved by Member Oswald, seconded by Member Kirby. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of Resolution B4 193638, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries 5-1 with Member Sandstead opposing. Member Oswald, if you could go to the next resolution, B 193639.
Sure, I'll read this resolution and then maybe CFO Erickson can explain what exactly happened with the actual sale of this, since this has already happened. The resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of an amendment to installment purchase contract and a supplement to declaration of trust, and approving the issuance, sale, and delivery of $41,715,000 full-time refunding certificates of participation series 2019B. We have the authority and background to do that, and lots of ABCs following that. Lots of sections, lots of redemptions, lots of things as I scroll by. Tax covenants, ooh, that sounds boring. Sorry. All the way to the post-issuance compliance policy and procedures that I read before. So the school board hereby approves the policy and procedures for the 2019B certificates. The Chief Financial Officer, Executive Director of Business Services, continues to be designated to be responsible for post-issuance compliance in accordance with the policies and procedures adopted this 23rd day of April 2019. I move Resolution B-4-19-3639.
Second. The chair can second. I learned that in my training, so I thought I'd slip that in there. So moved by Member Oswald, seconded by Leffler Camp. Is there any further discussion on Resolution B193639.
CFO Erickson has some comments.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, CFO Erickson.
Thank you, Chair Loeffler-Kemp. Just a quick comment that, again, a month ago when we visited about the Series 2019B and C, the 2019B, we had estimated an approximate interest savings of $1.6 million. As of the sale, which happened last Wednesday, the savings was $2.137 million. So again, we're seeing favorable markets, and so we're very pleased for this issue to have come in higher. So these are debt service bonds versus the certificates of participation through the general fund. So this will be reducing our debt service levy on our levy limitation and certification over the next life of this issue. So that is 2019B.
Thank you, CFO Erickson. So we have a second. Any further discussion? Member Sandstead?
I just wanted to translate that as this is $2.1 million of savings to the taxpayers for these. So that's a great thing.
Thank you for that shout out to the taxpayers. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of Resolution B193639, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. And then we'll move on to Resolution B4193640. Member Oswald?
Thank you. We're so good at it. Let's do it again. There's a resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of an amendment to installment purchase contract and a supplement to declaration of trust and approving the issuance, sale, and delivery of $2,710,000 full-term refunding certificates of participation, Series 2019C. And it goes on to say we have the authority to do this, and lots of ABCs again, cute charts. I don't mean to make light of this. This is serious business. More tax covenants. And back down to the continuing disclosure and post-issuance compliance. The Chief Financial Officer, Executive Director of Business Services continues once again to be designated to be responsible for post-issuance compliance in accordance with the policies and procedures adopted this 23rd day of April 2019. I move Resolution B-4-19-3640.
Second. Okay, moved by Member Oswald, seconded by Member Lofold. Is there any further discussion? Okay.
CFO Erickson has.
Okay, CFO Erickson.
Just to clarify, this is a smaller issue, but because these were also callable and because we could do these as a combined, the original savings that we looked at a little over a month ago were $108,000. They're up to $135,000, which gets us to that $2.27 million that I sent, the combined of both issues B and the 2019C. Thank you.
Thank you. CFO Erickson, any other further discussion, board members? Okay, all in favor of Resolution B4193640, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Good work. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, CFO Erickson, for your expertise, your guidance. We're very fortunate to have CFO Erickson's expertise on school finance overall and helping to guide us on this and make it more understandable. And Matt, thank you again for being at the last few meetings to help us understand this as well, and appreciate all the work that you have done to help us out. Yep. Thank you. We will go back then to the rest of the business committee. Member Oswald.
Thank you. So after all that, we just have informational items such as contract expenditures, contracts with no costs. There's no revenue contracts, no change orders. We had our facilities report, which was excellent as always, Mr. Spooner. Property sale updates. We continue to have properties for sale. And then we had our preliminary discussion about our budget considerations. And so I would like to pass that over to CFO Erickson, who does such a lovely, exciting job of explaining it.
Thank you, CFO Erickson. So we are, just so everyone's clear, on the, let's see here, towards the end of the business committee, then on H, preliminary 2019-20 budget information.
Thank you. Again, we spent a really engaging time discussing the preliminary proposed budget for fiscal year 20. Again, stressing that this is just kind of our first run at information. We will be continuing to analyze information and bringing you a final budget at our June business committee, and then final approval from the board at our regular June school board meeting. We went over what we see as far as the general fund. So even though we have multiple funds, including food service, community service, our debt service funds, trust, and other funds, we just focused mainly on our general fund, which we consider Funds 1, 3, and 5, which is the general, transportation, and operating capital budgets. We looked at our projected revenues, which again include the new referendum amount from the fall of 2018 successful Question 2 referendum and the renewal of Question 1. Looking at the different pieces of the general fund, we looked at how some of our dollars are reserved or restricted, and we had some really good discussion, and we are pulling together that information to give you kind of that same information in unrestricted versus those funds that are considered general fund but may have ties or strings attached that we have to follow through statute or district policy. So we'll be looking at that. Our preliminary revenue budget for fiscal year 20 is just over $109 million. We looked at those different pieces that include our strategic dollars, our facilities and technology dollars, special education, transportation, and then our general fund. We did look at them restricted versus unrestricted. And our definition of restricted would be those revenues that have a fund balance, a restricted fund balance per the Department of Education and through statute. So we broke those out. So should those revenues not be spent in full, we would have to set those aside into designated fund balances. We looked at our revenue considerations. We had the discussion about the legislature and knowing that both the House and Senate education bills were very different in terms of what we may see for new dollars on our basic formula. At this point, we are looking at a 1% increase in the basic formula, which equates to approximately $560,000. Should the legislature be more favorable, which again, we're hoping for a 2%, the House has 3% in theirs. So when we get to conference committee and we see what the legislature does, we'd be looking at approximately that $560,000 per 1% increase on the basic allowance. So including those items and then possibly that consideration, we'd be looking at just over $110 million. Again, most of our dollars are coming through the state. We do have local revenues and then our federal revenues. We do have some revenue notes because we do have some revenues that are declining for fiscal year 20. The compensatory revenue, as we know, is going down approximately $950,000. We also have a prior year referendum adjustment that's a little over $900,000. We are seeing an increase in our LTFM revenue, which is restricted based on our 10-year facilities plan. So those funds, even though new money to us, will be dedicated to projects that they were associated with and approved. So again, and then the new referendum dollars. So as we see some declines and some increases, we have a little bit of shift in our revenues. Switching over to expenditures, looking at our labor versus non-labor, we discussed briefly that in fiscal year 2018, our labor costs were approximately 78%, our non-labor were 22%. looking at where our categoricals are, and again, these are still under review. We are still processing all of our different expense areas. Again, we have contractual increases that we'll need to include, including salary and benefit and contractual increases, other obligations that the district has that we're continuing to analyze and review. And then again, just as a notation in our budget discussion, the fiscal and other fixed costs, you can see that that went down as a preliminary should the board have passed the Series 2019 A bonds. That reduces our payment obligation out of the general fund for fiscal year 20 in the next 10 years by approximately $600,000 this year, but it'll be $700,000 over the next 10 years. We did put an initial fund balance investment of $500,000 in the budget. Again, this is very preliminary. We'll see where all the line items add up to. But again, as we heard from Matt Rantipa from Baird, part of our bond rating has to do with our liquidity and what we have available. So that fiscal stability is an important piece of that. So, and I know that the board has indicated in several of our meetings that that fiscal stability piece is a critical piece. So we have that as a preliminary place in our budget. Looking at the bar graph again, just as a reminder, the majority of our dollars are spent in elementary and secondary education. Special education instruction is our second highest area, again, for those educational pieces. So the majority of our budget is spent on students, and the majority of our dollars are spent on people. Again, we have our preliminary considerations. We, again, are continuing to look at all of these, and we'll be continuing to report to you in May. We'll be coming back with another revised budget. As we keep going through the pieces of the budget, we'll be in touch with you as a board. So again, happy to entertain any questions, but we'll be continuing to dialogue with you as board members as we go through the process.
Thank you, CFO Erickson. Is there any questions, board members? I just had one comment question. Can you share again how you have been reaching out to our district principals and the school communities they represent to gather information?
Thank you for that question. We have met with all the building administration. We have met with many of our program directors and continue to have those on our agenda. We met with the Career Tech Department this morning, had a great conversation. We are then going to be following up. I know that there are building administrators, I don't know if there's any left here, oh yay, that we would plan on meeting with again very soon. And this has been and a very good process for me being new, so getting that information from them, and they are the creators of these budgets, and so they have been working with us and will be continuing to dialogue and edit as we go along so that the information that they're sharing is what's building this budget.
Thank you so much. Any other questions on for CFO Erickson? Okay. Member Oswald, you can continue on with your report.
Thank you. Almost done. So I just want to thank CFO Erickson for that lively, engaging talk. I'll forever be making up for that comment at the committee meeting. We talked about the committee process update of the subcommittee of Member Lofald, Chair Loeffler-Kemp, and myself are working to explore what our committee structure could look like, and we continue to do so. And then we had a discussion about the Duluth Charter Commission's mission to find out if even year elections are something that our community is interested in. We had no real strong opinions about that to report, but individual members are free to let anybody know whatever they like. We have a couple future items in policy updates and 10-year capital facilities plan. Woo! Everybody's excited about that for next month. Otherwise, I'm done. I move the business committee report.
Okay. Do I have a second? Second by Member Sandstead. Are there any items that people want to pull out or speak on? Member Gorham?
Yeah, I failed to do this previously, but I just wanted to state to CFO Erickson and Superintendent Gronseth, thank you for your decision, recognizing there wasn't consensus on the 2019 A issue to allow us to have some say in that tonight. I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Superintendent Gronseth?
I just had a clarification on 2A2.
Okay. So we turn it over to Facility Director David Spooner.
I think Superintendent Gronseth and I had the same thought. If it didn't snow, we're not paying anything. If it snows every day, we'll be paying more than what's identified. Those are time and material contracts, and we pay for work expended. So just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. We hope it doesn't snow. Okay. Board Member Lofold?
I think we'd want to pull B1.
Okay. Okay. Anything else you'd like to pull, anybody? I want to just make a comment on, a question and comment on F, the facilities report at the end, 6F. So we'll start then with no, we will go in order. So we'll start with B1, the boundary studies, and Member Lofold.
I just want to have conversation on this, so I pulled it, but I'd really like to hear from my board members. I'd even like to hear from Superintendent Gronseth. I'm interested in perspective historically, perspective between what a demographic study does versus a boundary study, and just some conversation. I'm listening.
Okay. Why don't we start with Superintendent Gronseth?
Sure, I can give some historical context. We talked a little bit about it at the committee meeting, but I can kind of summarize that. About 12 years ago, when we were considering the long-range facilities plan, and I was a teacher in the district at the time, there were lots of conversations about our school boundaries, probably about 6 months worth of conversations continued while we did that. There were many community meetings and discussions about the significance of both geographical and historical neighborhoods and barriers throughout the community, and how that should determine where our boundaries are. Also looking at the population, there were predictions from the state demographer about where population would be, where expansion would be. I can say at the time there was a tendency to expand outward into the more rural areas of the community, like in Lakewood and Homecroft. We were seeing a lot of building in those areas at the time. Today, we see a different trend. There's not as much development in the country, but young families are really wanting to live in the center city. There's more desire for easy access, for walking to school, for being close to amenities. So we're seeing some different trends, and that happens over time. And then I want to say it was 5 or 6 years ago, we had a demographic study to predict what our populations would do and to look at how many families are in each area. What we know is over time, neighborhoods and school boundaries and the families within there change and age and grow. So in one neighborhood, I can remember times on my street when we were living in Lakeside when it seemed like every house had a toddler in it, and there were small children all over the neighborhood. And then over time, those toddlers became elementary students, and then middle school students, and then high school students, and then they were off to college, and it seemed like there were very few kids in that neighborhood at the time. But in a few blocks over, there were tons of young families over there. And so over time, as neighborhoods age and change and grow, the number of children in that neighborhood changes as well, and that affects how many kids are in our elementary schools or our middle schools or our high schools. Our high schools and our middle schools have much larger boundaries, and so there's many more neighborhoods. Those don't fluctuate quite as quickly as our elementary neighborhoods do because they're in smaller areas and they're more susceptible to that aging out process of a neighborhood. In 2017, we had another demographic study done. That was by RSP, and those proposals had two aspects. One was the demographic study, looking at our populations, doing projections for school enrollments based on our boundaries. That was both the study 5 years ago and the one that was completed in 2017. For both of those studies, we did use that demographic information, those projections. We looked at our school capacities and what the populations meant for those capacities. And at that time, we chose not to engage in the boundary study portion of that. There were predictions that our enrollments would level off a bit, which we have, and it seems like we're still on a declining enrollment, but things are much more steady than they used to be. Difference between like 1% from year to year. However, we continue to have some schools that are very full, and some schools that are not as full. And so I believe for the health of the district, both financially and space-wise in our buildings, that is why we are proposing looking at a boundary study so that we can even out those enrollment numbers between our schools, especially looking at the elementaries, but we also know that there are differences between our middle schools and our high schools, and this would give us an opportunity to enter into community discussion and staff discussion about what we would like our enrollment numbers to look like and what are our priorities looking at that. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Superintendent Grunstedt. Other board members that would like to comment on this? Okay. I guess I would just say a couple things. I know you get tired of hearing me say that I've been a parent in the district for 25 years, but I have, and that's my reality. And so I have seen us go through other boundary studies and reviewing boundary changes over that time period. And for me, it's important that we have a study from a company that's outside the area that will create a non-biased approach to this. I was impressed with the different districts that Cooperative Strategies have worked with. And I know I just really want a thorough and a thoughtful process with community involvement. In my own neighborhood that I currently live in and have lived in for 10 years, we have 60 kids under the age of 10. Assistant Superintendent Horton added one of those children to our neighborhood as well. And, so just the neighborhood I've lived in for 25 years, and particularly this neighborhood I'm in, has changed so much. So, and I think, that'll be really helpful for us to better understand the changing neighborhoods that we have and the impacts that it is having on our elementary schools. And so I know I have had people comment on this to me and say, well, haven't we did this? And we did this in 2001, and Superintendent Grunset went over some of that history, but I think, our neighborhoods are changing here in Duluth. So I will be supporting this. Great, I'm glad it spurred some discussion, and so I am going to start with Member Gorham, and then Member Oswald, and then Member Kirby. So Member Gorham.
Thank you, Chair. I think when you look at the two proposals that we got, I just want to say I agreed with the superintendent's decision to suggest cooperative strategies. They have an impressive resume of experience doing this with school districts. For example, Baltimore Public Schools. And part of our conversation was, unless you've done this before, there may be some things you could run into that you haven't experienced before. I think if we're going to invest in this, let's go with someone who's done this many times, who has the ability to think about multiple factors, not just hard lines and numbers, but community values and ways we could do things maybe that are innovative or add on to something that's already been successful for us, like exploring immersion schools. Could we add more to give people more options about the learning experiences of their child in public school? There's just a lot of things there, and I think this group with this much experience would just bring a lot to the table for our investment in them. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Member Gorham. Member Oswald?
I know there's been a lot of conversation about, of course, we want to spend the least amount of money possible, and we want to go with local because they know what we have and the intricacies of our communities. I have to argue that the national company has a much better product for us to take advantage of and to engage our community members with. There are many complexities when discussing boundaries, and it's really hard to encompass all of them with a couple local people that haven't done it before. The national firm is somebody that works solely on doing this, knows the pitfalls, knows where communities, don't trust others and accuse people of being politically motivated. Well, there's this national firm that's going to come in and it's going to take it really slow. And people will have the opportunity to approach us and be involved and engaged and see why it's complex and understand if you move the line one block one way or one block another or a whole neighborhood, they can physically see how it affects the whole. That's really important. It's more important than just having community meetings where we all sit around and put Post-it notes on giant pages and, we summarize that data and go, here you go, that's what we think. We've all been there, we've all done it, and then nothing happens, and then we just do what we thought we might want to do anyway. Well, this process appears to be engaging and solid and research-based, and we'll have whatever we want to be a priority and have as many people involved as we would like or that want to be involved. I think it's well worth the expense. I've been assured that we can afford it because I asked, and it's an asset to our community. I don't see why we shouldn't go with it.
Thank you, Member Oswald. Member Kirby?
Thank you. My comment has to do with the fact that I had forgotten that we were offered RSP to do a boundary portion of the study, and the board said they did not want that, so it was purely demographic. My vote for this will be that we should do it, but contingent on that we go ahead and actually do the boundary changes. It's going to cause problems. Not everyone is going to like it, no matter what we do. But I think it's necessary to look at it in the near term and perhaps, every 3 to 5 years, whatever that is. But I think that we have to do it and we can't let it sit. We have to tell people, yes, we're going to do this.
Thank you, Member Kirby. Superintendent Grants, I see your light's on, and so I'm going to call on you, but I also have a question. If you could address, just so that the public out there doesn't think this is going to happen tomorrow or next fall, just timeline, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Timeline, as Member Oswald suggested, this will be a slower process. We want to take a very thoughtful approach to this. This would be, next year would be a planning year that would have recommendations, and certainly there might be some changes that happen the year after, which would be 2021, but very likely this would be a phased-in decision that would take 3 to 5 years to implement, and so things won't happen without people knowing it, without lots of communication and plans and grandfathering and all kinds of things. So it'd be a longer decision. The reason I had my light on is I really, although I'm recommending cooperative strategies for all of the reasons that have been mentioned here tonight, I do want to say that I have a lot of respect for Northspan and for the local talent at Northspan. They are very good at community engagement and at the many projects that they've done throughout our community. And I know that they could scale up the number of meetings that they had. They could kind of rework that proposal, but at the heart of it, cooperative strategies still has over 25 years of doing only school boundaries and have worked with over 2,000 school districts. And I think that experience is invaluable. So no disrespect to Northspan, and all the best to them.
Thank you. Member Lofold?
Well, I asked and you shared, so thank you. It just seems like in my year and a half on the board, I'm excited about the opportunities that this endeavor will go, that we have some problems with population balance, and people always want solutions. We don't just want, to deal with, talking about the problem. So with your guidance and help of making my decision, it just seemed to come, for me personally, it just came like last week, and it's like, holy man, this is a big topic, and we got a few community emails, but not many. But I talked to a few community people that are on kind of the same line, like we just had one in 2017, or why don't we go with the local, or we really don't need it at all. We just do the boundaries and get it done with. So it kind of spanned that kind of reaction. But we're a thoughtful board, and we want to make sure that we are listening to our community and get their input. But what I shared with you last week too, and it's what Member Kirby said too, is then I don't know, maybe I don't want to, if the boundary observation doesn't meet the problems that we have to solve, then, but I do hope that if we're going to go down this road, that we have the courage to put into place the boundaries. And then going back to a comment Superintendent Grants had a while ago, was really then, other districts do a lot of boundary changes because housing patterns and family patterns change over 2 to 5 years. There are districts throughout the state of Minnesota that read boundary every 4 to 7 to 8 years as neighborhoods develop and change. So this could be something that, if done right, and our community at least accepts that we worked hard on this, then we'd see this happening every 4 to 7 years as we work to equalize our population. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for good discussion on that. Any further comments on that item? Okay. Then the last item was just my comment on the facility report, and I just had 2 quick questions. David Spooner, you mentioned you worked on documents awarding Safe Schools grant, And can you just talk a little bit about that briefly?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure, thank you. Sure, thank you, Member Loeffler Camp. I'm working with MDE and MMB to complete the documents required for us to achieve or acquire the 2 MDE safety grants that we received, and the amounts are almost 70,000 split between Denfeld and Rockridge. I don't have a date or a timeline when we might receive those funds, but I'm in the process of trying to complete all the documents that the state requires.
Okay. Thank you. And then my other comment on your report was, again, I just always appreciate, maybe because of my environmental background, but all of the testing and the training that is being done, and was glad to see the radar training testing was done. So just thank you for always reporting what you're doing in terms of training. Okay, is there any other further discussion on the business committee? Okay, so Member Oswald moved it. It was seconded by Member Sandstead. All in favor of the business committee report, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the business committee passes. And then we have 2 special resolutions, and the first one, Member Kirby, if you could read the resolution for the school board training.
I will. Resolution SP 4-19-3641, authorizing school board members' attendance at the MSBA Phase 3 workshop. Resolved that Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, pay costs incurred as per district policy for school board members to attend the MSBA Phase 3 workshop held in April 2019. I move Resolution SP 4-19-3641.
Moved by Member Kirby, seconded by Member Oswald. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of Resolution SP 4-19-3641, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. And then the next resolution, Member Gorham, if you could please read that.
Thank you, Chair. Resolution to recognize May as Mental Health Awareness Month at ISD 709. Whereas mental health is a key component of every individual's overall physical health and emotional well-being, and whereas mental health helps to sustain our thought processes, relationships, productivity, and ability to adapt to change or face adversity, and whereas mental illness adversely affects our abilities, and whereas long delays, sometimes decades, often occur between the time symptoms first appear and when we get help, and whereas early identification and treatment can make a profound difference in successful management of mental illness and recovery, and whereas every citizen and community can make a difference in helping end the silence and stigma that for too long has surrounded mental illness and discouraged people from getting help, and whereas Northland Healthy Minds is working to promote public education and community activities which can reduce stigma, encourage mental health, and help improve the lives of all affected by mental illness. Now therefore be it resolved, Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2009 as Mental Health Awareness Month in Duluth Public Schools to increase public understanding of the importance of mental health and to promote identification and treatment of mental illness.
Second.
I move SP 4-19-3642, and I appreciate your enthusiasm.
I am. I'm very enthusiastic about this. I second this. Is there any further discussion?
If I may.
Yes.
Just a shout out to all the district staff and partners who support our students, who deal with mental illness and help support their mental health and well-being. On May 2nd, there will be a community event hosted by a coalition known as Northland Healthy Minds that consists of well over 40 organizations and works in the northeast region of Minnesota to reduce the stigma of mental illness. We'll have Ron Lake from Duluth Public Schools there to speak about what Duluth Schools does, along with the City of Duluth and St. Louis County. So I just want to recognize all the staff who support our students through all the things that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor of Resolution SP 419-3642, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 6-0. Thank you again, Member Gorham, for bringing this forward. So we are at the end here. Is there any other questions or comments? Okay. Member Lofold?
I just want to encourage our leadership on the board to work to get us a retreat or a school board, what do we want to call it, workshop or meeting of the whole, to have further conversation on setting our visions and our goals for being a strong board the next 6 months. But we've talked about it. I'd really like to put it on our leadership to schedule a time.
Second.
Okay, thank you for your comments, and it certainly is something we have talked about and thought about, and we'll put it into play with the other schedules that we have with the superintendent search as well. So we do have a lot on our plate that some of it, so it would involve a committee of the whole meeting and everyone kind of committing to that time, and I think that discussion is happening. So any other questions or comments? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, seconded by, or made by Member Gorham. Is her second? Second. Okay, seconded by Member Lofold. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you for a good meeting.